Mark Ambrose here, and welcome to Faith in the Real World, where we try to bridge the gap that can often be created between church and everyday life, between the things we read in our Bible and actually how we live them out. And so we try to address topics that maybe aren't as often addressed as they should be. But our topic today is a global topic. It's a global evil. It's human trafficking. It's been said that human trafficking is the fastest growing criminal enterprise right now on the planet, where some 20 million people are being bought and sold, coerced into either forced labor or the sex trade business. Now, there are many organizations that are doing a great job of addressing this issue and rescuing people that are being trafficked. Um, but I came across one organization. It's called the MST Project, and they're located in Thailand. And their approach, I believe, is revolutionary. It's headed up by founder and director Chris Lenty, and I had the opportunity to chat with him today, and so I think you're going to be really surprised by their approach. So let's take a listen. Hey,
Yep.
Chris, good to see you, and
Hey,
thanks for
see you
taking
too, Mark.
time out of your schedule. I know you're a busy guy, but welcome to Faith in the Real World.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Mark. Thank you. See
Hey,
you, friend.
so
It's good to
we're
see you.
talking about human trafficking, and which obviously is related to prostitution, and just how it's
Yeah.
such a global problem. And most people address, or organizations at least, address this problem from a rescue standpoint. Rescuing
Yeah.
women, rescuing young
Mhm.
girls who have been victimized by pimps and trafficked into the sex trade and sex industry. Whereas you're addressing the problem from a whole different perspective. Why don't you share with us what that's all about?
Yeah, sure. Well, our whole perspective is to reach out to men that visit red light districts. So our whole vision and heart is to see men restored to their families, to their wives, to their children, to their communities. It's to see man not as part of the problem, but really, Mark, as part of the solution, to provide the same care, compassion to men that we do to women. And that if we're able to do that and we're able to see them as people, I think that at that time we're able to see a transformation take place, not behavior management, but heart transformation. And that's what God has done in our life, and which we want to see Him do in the lives of these men as well.
Got it. And so when you're talking about men, you're not talking about men prostitutes. You're talking about men, the buyers of
Right.
prostitution, who are often viewed as um, um, the ones that are victimizing women.
Hmm.
And so you're actually going after the demand side, if you will, of this industry rather than dealing with the supply side.
Hmm.
Wow, that's a very different approach.
Yes, it is.
How did you get into that? How did you even think of that or attempt to approach it from that
Sure.
perspective?
Sure. Well, it's a good question, and I think as I look at my life, I see areas where God has really delivered me from certain areas of addictions and struggles, and so really this ministry is born out of a heart of what God has not only done in my life, but in the lives of so many other men as well. Whether it's struggles with things that we look at, whether it's struggles in previous relationships, whether it's the brokenness that we've gone through either as children, young adults, or even into adulthood. So for all of us in the ministry, it's a very personal ministry because we've seen areas again of brokenness in our own life, our own families, our own hearts. We've seen God restore that. We've seen God redeem that. We've seen God heal that. And so I think that really allows us the opportunity to go and minister. As you said, Mark, these are men. We don't view them as victims or victimizers. We view them as men that God desires to redeem and to restore as well, much like He's done in our own life.
And I know, they're often reviewed or referred to as Johns, and I
That's
know
right.
that's a term that you like to avoid or dispel.
Hmm.
Give me a little background on that.
Yeah, well, that's a good one. I hear a lot people call these men anything from Johns to sex tourists. And when I hear that, I tell people, you're right. They are John, but they're also Peter and Tom, Samuel, Mark, Chris. They're men. They're men with a name. They're men with a story. They're men with families. And at the end of the day, they're somebody's father, somebody's brother, somebody's son. And I think that really comes out of the perspective that if we look at men as a stereotype, we really release ourselves from the responsibility of engaging those men. And so when we look in the Bible, we see that both men and women were created in the image of God.
Mm.
And so with that perspective in that heart, we see men not as somebody worthy to ignore and to reject, but somebody to embrace, to walk life with, to be a part of a journey that we pray leads them to the same relationship, redemption, restoration, freedom, and healing that we have in Jesus.
Okay. And now you're in Ohio, but you're
Hmm.
normally not in Ohio. You have a
That's
ministry
right.
and you do this work actually in Thailand. Um,
Hmm.
and you're out there on the streets. You're on the streets in the red light district of Thailand. So how does that work? I mean, what's when you're out there? What kind of encounters do you have? I mean, what is really going on there? I mean, because you're on the front lines, where you're not just talking about it or reading about it. You're there.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's interesting because a lot of people look at these men simply as just engaging in sinful behavior, which a lot of men are. But I think what a lot of people maybe don't perhaps see or realize is that there are many issues that drive men to these areas. To say that all men just go for immorality isn't accurate. To
Mm,
say that all men go there because they're broken isn't accurate either.
mm,
But there are men that are there because they're looking for some sort of fulfillment. They're looking for a sense of value, a sense of purpose, a sense of intimacy, relationship. Again, some men go there because it is immorality for sale on a scale that's very hard for many of us to fathom. But to say that all men are like that is inaccurate. And so our goal isn't to reach out to every man. Our goal is to reach out to the men that God is already working in their heart, who maybe have seen beyond the facade of the area and who are open to making lifestyle changes and inviting us into their life to be a part of what those changes would look like.
mm. So you're really talking about brokenness, kind of on both
It is.
sides of the equation, the supply and
It
demand
is.
side, really.
Correct. Yeah, what we're looking at is not just telling somebody to stop what they're doing, but walking with them and helping them see that there's something more than just the short term, temporary satisfaction that that area promises to each and every person that comes. And so it's a lot of mentorship, it's a lot of potential discipleship.
Mm,
And really, Mark, at the end of the day, it's being available to people, saying, I can't make you change, but if you want to, I'm here for you and I'm committed to you, to your life, not just for the next week, but for the long term.
how receptive are these men? I mean, do you just kind of walk up and talk to them? What's that encounter look like?
Yeah, well, we're in the same areas where they are. We're not in the actual environment, in the locations or the businesses that they frequent, but we're in that general vicinity. So we're able to talk to them as they enter or leave the premises. Um, and, it all depends on the night. It all depends on the men. But what we have found is that men are open to talking. Men
Mm,
are open to discussing deeper issues. Men are open to being honest and vulnerable. And I would say that, occasionally and sometimes quite often, men are open to sharing those issues of their life that maybe perhaps were part of the process that led them to that environment that particular night.
and so you start a discussion, and then after that, maybe build somewhat of a relationship, and then so what is the next
Mm-hmm.
step then? Is it follow up? Is it a exchange of phone numbers? How does that work?
Yeah. Well, it's a couple different. At any point where they need somebody to be a part of their life, we want to be available to those men. We want ourselves to be known as being available anytime, any day. For those men that invite us into their life on a much deeper level, we're willing to meet with them as often as they're willing to meet with us. Some of the discussions go quite deep into faith. Some of the discussions are very superficial. But as we're trying to be honest and vulnerable about what's happened in our life, we see that that environment is created in their heart as well, and they begin to open up. And I
Mm.
think it's then where we're really able to speak into some of those issues, into some of those heart moments, into some of those, for some men, those painful moments. And we're not just trying to give answers, we're trying to give, I think, solutions. And we don't want to just encourage men to find the solutions on their own. We want to help guide them and talk to them, show them, but live it for them as well. And every step of the way to be a part of that process with them. So it's a lot of talking, it's a lot of It's a lot of meals. It's a lot of just spending time together, asking questions. But I think most important, Mark, it's a lot of listening, and
Mm,
it's really caring about the person as opposed to just wanting to stop an industry.
mm,
And I think really that's our heart. It's not to stop the industry. It's to help minister to the heart of the person that is meeting with us.
mm.
So it's bringing it down from a enormous level down to a very personal, intimate level with that person that we're
Mm.
talking to.
Makes sense. It's just their behavior is the fruit of what's going on inside. It's the smoke at
That's
the
right.
end of the pipe. It's not the problem kind of
That's
thing.
right.
And you're
That's
just
right.
getting under the hood of the car. It
Hmm.
sounds like a journey too. The first
It is.
encounter, first discussion. This isn't wrapped up in a 10-minute discussion. This is kind of
Sure.
walking a journey with a man who is willing
Right.
to walk and ultimately lead them to the
Yeah.
Lord.
Yeah, you're right. It's not just a 5 minute checklist of things that we want to cover. It's beginning a process that as long as he's open, it's a lifelong commitment to this man. And
Wow.
you bring up a good point where you were saying management. It's not about managing their behavior. It's about being a part of their heart transformation. Because really, I think that's what the end result needs to be, and it's what our heart is. And we know that looking in the Word, that's God's heart as well, a transformation of the heart. So that's what
Amen.
we're aiming for. That's what we're praying for, and that's what's happened in our own life as well.
What have you found to be the most rewarding part of this journey and in this ministry?
Yeah, I think the most rewarding thing, Mark, is I think seeing men open up about issues where you would think that they would be quite close to. Seeing men share vulnerable moments. We've seen men cry. We've seen men ask for hugs. We've seen men share
Mm,
some very, very personal things in their life, and then asking us for some of our input, or asking us or trusting us with their story, trusting us to speak into their life or to help them find an even more professional outlet for healing. That's been amazing. But obviously, the hardest to see people come to know the Lord.
yeah.
And just last year, about 6 months ago, we did. After about 3 years of investment in one man's life, he began to see what it was that we were talking about, to see it in action, and he embraced the Lord, and he asked him into
Amen.
his life. And so obviously, Mark, seeing people experience that is great. Seeing people walk in freedom is great. Seeing people set free from their past to walk in the freedom today that's
Mm,
found in God. Oh, that's unbelievably encouraging, and it's amazing.
yeah. And I could see, and it's such a domino effect. You're not just dealing
Mhm.
with one guy. Ultimately, you're dealing with his family indirectly. You're dealing
That's
with
right.
his
That's
children
right.
if he has any, or
Hmm.
or indirectly you are protecting the people that are being trafficked, much like the drug problem
Sure.
today, right? Everybody goes after the supply
Sure.
side and cut the suppliers
Hmm.
down rather than the demand side and the people that are actually
Hmm.
buying this stuff. And so,
Yeah, that's right.
yeah, so a very cool approach, very different, I think,
Hmm.
in many ways
Hmm.
revolutionary. A lot of people aren't doing this. And so I just appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule. And I know, we're only here in the States for a season, then you go back home to
Hmm.
Thailand
That's
to
right.
jump back into
Hmm.
ministry. So, and I really appreciate you just kind of sharing your heart. If people want to
Hmm.
support you, either through prayer or
Hmm.
financially, what's the best way to get in touch with you, given you're overseas and that kind of stuff?
Sure. Sure, Mark. The best thing is for people to go to our website and click on our
Okay.
contact page or our donation page. On our website, we've got everything from videos to blogs, prayer guides, ways for people to really get the heart of what we're doing, to see the impact that we're able to have in the heart of men, and then of course to see the needs that we have again through prayer and finances. It's all on the website, and it's we find it very informative, and we hope that people find it very encouraging and inspiring as well.
And why don't you give us that website?
Sure. That's www.mstproject.com. So that's
Awesome.
mstproject.com.
Yeah, and I know you're involved in more than the red light. You have that hope
That's right.
campaign going on. You have
Hmm.
that whole purity for men's side. So yeah, just a
That's right.
great organization, front cutting line, cutting edge
Hmm.
stuff in Thailand. And we'll be praying for you, bro. And again, I just really appreciate
All
you
right.
taking the time. It's a noble work. It's a godly work. It's fulfilling the Great Commission.
That's
in a
right.
very new and innovative way. And so we'll be praying for you. But thanks again for being on Faith in the Real World.
All right. Thank you, Mark. God bless you.
God bless you.